Week 5 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I'd add this week. The first one, the Arizona Cardinals. Their streaming option this week out there in 83% of fantasy leagues. And so far this season, they've had a couple decent games. Week 2 versus Carolina, 22 points allowed, 3 sacks and INT, fumble recovery touchdown. Week 3 at San Francisco, 16 points allowed, a sack, interception, safety. And Week 4 versus Seattle, they did lose that ball game, but I thought they played well at times. 23 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. So Week 5, a great matchup versus the Tennessee Titans. Give up the third most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. Cam Ward, he even admitted they're playing horrible. Is this Tennessee Titan team? They got shut out last week by the Houston Texans, 26-0 in that ball game. So I think as a streaming option, and with Tennessee arguably the worst offense in all pro football coming in, Arizona could go out there and they're a great option this week, available in 83% of fantasy leagues. Next DST is the Indianapolis Colts. So this Indianapolis Colts team, they've been a decent streaming option as well this season. In the last few games for them, Week 2 versus Denver in a track meet where they got the victory, 28 points allowed, an interception. Week 3 at Tennessee, 20 points allowed, 4 sacks, a pick six, a block kick. And Week 4 at the Rams, I know they gave up 27 points, but they got to Stafford in that one, 3 sacks, full recovery. So this week, a great matchup versus the Vegas Raiders. Geno Smith, he's been a turnover machine this season, where last week, again, the Chicago Bears got to him early and often, had 3 interceptions in that ball game. And I think this week, Indianapolis, they could get pressure on Geno. Brock Bowers, he hasn't been the same this season. The report's off with Geno, and also he's not 100%. Playing with a bulky knee brace where he got hurt in Week 1. Bobby Myers, he's had up and down games. So this offense, not much going besides Shinjinti with the big game last week. But Indianapolis, I think, could bottle him up a little bit in this one where he struggled all season long till last week. So this week is a good streaming option and a matchup where the Vegas Raiders give up the 5th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. They're available right now in 78% of fantasy leagues. Next DST is the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns, they're one of the better units in the league, obviously led by Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward in the secondary. But the problem is this Brown team, they don't give up a lot of points, but they don't create a lot of turnovers. Week 2 at Baltimore, 35 points allowed, 3 sacks. Week 3 versus Green Bay, 10 points allowed, 5 sacks, an interception, a block kick. And Week 4 at Detroit, I know they gave up the 34 points and an into, but their defense was put in some bad positions where Detroit was already almost in the red zone on turnovers. So this week, a great matchup versus Minnesota, 2nd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. I know Minnesota made a late surge in last week's game versus Pittsburgh, but Carson Wentz, we know he's going to take a lot of sacks. We know he's a quarterback that turns the football a lot over as well. And this week, I think Cleveland back home and Myles Garrett, obviously one of the best, if not the best pass rusher. I think it's him or TJ Watt in all pro football. He's going to get to Carson Wentz a couple times. And like I said, Wentz is good for turnovers. So this week is a streaming option. They're out there in 92% of fantasy leagues. Next DST is another streamer, is the New York Giants. So this week, a good matchup going into New Orleans for this New York Giant DST. Week 3 versus Kansas City, I thought they did an okay job versus Mahomes in the offense. 22 points allowed, 2 sacks. And then last week versus Herbert in that offense, only 18 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. So this week at New Orleans, like I said, Spencer Rattler in their quarterback. I know they got some weapons, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Jawan Johnson. So not a bottom half offense over there in New Orleans. And even last week, it was a game for most of 3 quarters at the Buffalo Bills. But New York, they got some good pass rushers. Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, he's coming along in his first season in the NFL, and you got Burns as well. So they got a couple guys over there that could create havoc for the quarterback. And like I said, last week they held down for the most part a good Charger offense, even I know they're down 2 good offensive linemen. So this week in New Orleans is a streaming option. I think the Giants could go out there and be serviceable, and they're available in 98% of fantasy leagues. And the final DST, staying in the same game, another streaming option is the New Orleans Saints. So this Saint DST, they've been bad all season long, no doubt about it. Week 2 versus the Niners, 26 points allowed, 3 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 3 at Seattle, 44 points allowed, a fumble recovery. In Week 4 at Buffalo, in that one, 31 points allowed, 3 sacks, and interception. But this week with New York coming in, Malik Neighbors out for the season, tearing the ACL. Young quarterback Jackson Dart, no doubt about it, looked good last week for this Giant team, but now his first road game, and now without Neighbors, it changes the aspect as well, even though I know Neighbors, he was at the majority of the game, but New Orleans now could game plan even better. So while they were out there 99% of fantasy leagues, and I'm just going off a streaming option in deeper leagues with a good matchup, they're an ad this week. So that's a few defense DST units I would add for week 5 of the fantasy football season.